Good evening, and welcome to the public hearing for this evening. We have two public hearings this evening. The first hearing was the residential improvement district for Villas of Canterwood, which has been canceled. Mr. Rose will give us an explanation on that in a minute. And then the second public hearing this evening is for the residential improvement district for Ivy Ridge. Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Dondorfer, members of the board. Due to an administrative oversight, it was realized that the Villas of Canterwood development is actually split into two taxing districts, one being the Menor School District, the other being the Riverside School District. Phase 2 is the cul-de-sac that applies to Riverside Schools. Riverside Schools was not properly notified of the hearing. I did reach out to Riverside Schools yesterday. I asked them if they would waive the notification requirement. They have chosen not to waive the notification requirement. So we will be rescheduling that hearing during the regular trustees meeting. My recommendation is to reschedule that for September 4th of 2024 at 7:15 p.m. And that I will ask for that at the regular trustee meeting.
All right,
that concludes my report on Canterwood, and I apologize for the inconvenience.
Can you confirm that legal notice was published in a timely manner regarding the...
I can. Both hearings were published in the Lake County News Herald in the appropriate time frame. I have the affidavit here that they were published on the June 12th, 2024 edition, and I have a sworn copy from the News Herald stating that they were published, along with a proof copy of what was published. And it does match the actual paper we have. So proper notice was made.
Great, thank you. And if you would, Mr. Rose, if you're able to provide some background information on the RID for our residents who are either here this evening or watching online.
I would be happy to, thank you. The residential improvement district is similar to a TIF. We have been utilizing tax increment financing, which is for commercial property, for over 15 years that I can recall right off the top of my head, most likely longer. And what that does is when new commercial development comes in, we place a TIF over the property, and 75% of the taxes on the increased value of the property is essentially diverted to Concord Township for infrastructure projects. A RID is the exact same process, but it applies to residential properties. Earlier this year, we learned about RIDs, and then I had some discussions with my counterparts. These are very common in southern Ohio. There is a community down in Claremont or Montgomery County. They border each other. I think they have 5 or 6 RIDs going right now. So after some research, and we talked about this, I believe, the second meeting in March, maybe the first meeting in April, we talked about this on the record, and we decided to proceed with establishing a residential improvement district over both Villas of Canterwood and Ivy Ridge development for the purposes of infrastructure. There were 4 infrastructure needs that were called out in the proposed resolution. There was to help with construction costs for Fire Station 2, fire prevention apparatus, park improvements, and town hall construction improvements were called out. The Ohio Revised Code specifically outlines appropriate uses, and what this does is a RID diverts tax dollars from the local school system, any local career center. In our case, it would be Auburn Career Center. and Lakeland Community College, and then the county's portion, which is the Lake County Commissioners General Fund portion. The other taxing entities within Lake County, such as the Adamsport, Senior Services, Children's Services, Crime Lab, Metro Parks, and I'm sure I'm missing one, but those are, libraries. They are excluded from being, taxes being impacted, their revenue being impacted. There are two options for RIDs and subsequently TIFs. Option one is a 10-year term length, and that provides the township with 75% of the taxes on the increased value for 10 years. The other 25% goes to the existing respective taxing districts. So in this case with Ivy Ridge, Riverside Schools would still get 25% of the increased value of taxes. Auburn would still get an increase. Lakeland Community College would still get an increase, and the county commissioners would still get an increase. And again, all the other taxing entities aren't affected by this. That process runs for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, then the RID is then closed, and 100% of the taxable value revenue goes to the respective school, career center, community college, county commissioners. We had, when I arrived here 6 years ago, we had 5 TIFs in place. We have 2 that are still running, 1 that will run out at the end of this year, and then we have 1 more running out next year. The other option is a 30-year 100% TIF. That option requires negotiation with the respective school districts and also Auburn Career Center in order to negotiate amounts that could be received by the township and then reimbursed back to the schools. The philosophy of the township, going back the 15 years I've looked, has always been to do the shorter term, utilize the 75%, and that ensures that the schools get an increase in their revenue with whatever project is coming in, and so we followed that same track for this particular process. I know there was a big story in the News Herald, and the reporter did a very nice job. The estimate, while we don't have sale prices for all the homes, in talking with the developer and looking at the number of properties, I think over the 10 years it will be about $4 million. It might be slightly less in the high 3s, or it might go up to 4, 4.5. You don't know what the actual number is going to be until the houses are established and the value is set on them by the yard. So,
question on just that and the procedure. So
yes, sir.
We're putting this in for, we go ahead and adopt this. This is going to be a 10-year window. Right now, we're putting this on in Ivy Ridge, for example. I don't know how much it's built there, right? So this isn't. You take a look at the projections of all 100% build out, and we're going to spend a portion of that 10 years incrementally building in towards 100%. So it isn't going to be a thing that is, we're not going to realize 100% of this thing until some way halfway through the thing.
Well, that's correct, but as each parcel is developed,
right,
the 10-year clock starts for that parcel.
Oh, okay, so
it will ebb and flow. It will build up, and then once the entire development is built out,
okay,
you'll receive that, and then it will taper off.
So the first houses going in will be 10 years. They'll drop off the roof, and the last houses at that 10-year mark may have 3 or 4 years left. Based
That's
on
correct.
That got completed.
That's correct, depending on the speed of the
Construction.
development. Ivy Ridge currently, they've got the model home built, and I know there's a few lots that have been sold, but I don't know that they built anything but the model home at this point.
Canterwood might be looking for.
Canterwood does have some sales, and that'll be addressed at the public hearing.
Right.
once you set that date.
All right, thank you for that explanation, Mr.
Yes,
Rose.
sir.
And I would encourage any of our residents, if you'd like to reach out to any of the trustees or Mr. Rose for questions regarding the writ. If you have other questions that haven't been answered, please do so. At this point in the public hearing, I'd like to open up the hearing to any public comments. So if you want to come individually, one at a time to the lectern and state your name and address, and then we will answer your comments. We appreciate it. Thank you.
My name is Gary Matteo. I reside at 7582 Cantor Wood Trail, one of the 3 residents currently living there.
Welcome.
Thanks. I just really have one question. Section 4 of this resolution states that 100% of the increase in true value. What is meant by true value? For example, if I bought my lot for $100,000 and I built a $500,000 house, that $500,000 house is an improvement. Is that taxed at 35%, like typically taxes are on the assessed value, or is it taxed at 100%?
I think what we're,
No, I don't know, I'd have to look at it.
I think what we're talking about here is, 100% of the increase in true value. So for easy administrative math, you purchased a home, you purchased a lot for $100,000, and then at the end, when the auditor assesses the value, the house and the land are now worth $500,000. $400,000 would then be subject to the residential improvement district, and then 75% of the $400,000 increased value would then be the portion that comes to Concord Township for those respective entities. But that's the way I understand this to work.
So it's on the improvement portion, the building
Well,
portion?
it's the increase, that's what we're capturing, but wouldn't be, every value is in Lake County taxed at that 30, so it would still go through that 30.
That's my question.
Yes.
Yeah, so
The
you're only,
appraised versus the
It's
assessed
not
value.
true value, I'm confused by the word
well,
true value.
what they're saying is, my interpretation is that the true, whatever the auditor, the appraisal process says is, oh, I just built a
And
house.
then
and-
35%
Right,
of
they
the
agree,
appraisal.
right, yes.
Correct.
So we're not talking about a higher rate of tax, we're talking about the same rate of
Yeah, and
tax.
let me just state, I'm all for this. I think it's a great thing. I have no objection to this whatsoever. I just wanted a clarification.
Thank you.
We appreciate it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
you. Thank you.
My name is Daniel K. Dunlap. I live at 7320 Morley Road. My comment would be the article in the News Herald wasn't very good. It was sketchy at best. I reckon there were going to be winners and losers in this, school systems and others, but Mr. Rose has explained that the overall triennial evaluation won't be effective for schools. The park has too much money to begin with, it won't affect them and others. A question that I have is, I understand the burden that commercial development puts on the township. However, I don't quite understand why 2 residential areas are being paid for infrastructure. My understanding, the developer is normally absorb those costs, and then the property's been assessed for sewer, water, and the rest of it. Concord's growing plenty fast enough. Do we think it's not growing fast enough? Why are we going to pay for residential development?
If I may, Mr. Chair. None of the money that's generated from the RID will go to the developer. not one dime. The developer is paying for their own infrastructure for the development. This infrastructure is township-related infrastructure, because with the increase in additional residents, and I'll use, well,
Let's do Moose Road,
there is a,
Reading.
there is an increase with residents, there is an increase in fire service calls, there's an increase to the use of parks, and those are two of the specific examples that we utilized, and that helps the township to offset some of those costs.
I think, to expand on that, I think that's fairly stated. I think to expand on that thought, the general fund in Concord Township really hasn't appreciably changed while our demands in this community, and to your point, is growing, have increased, and we're dealing with those costs. As you're potentially aware, our safety service budget's in the hole big time, and we need to come eventually and ask the community to approve a tax increase by approving another levy. We've been saying that all year long. It's my thinking that it's our duty and responsibility as elected officials in this community to be sound stewards of not only the dollars, but to be responsible in how we fund the government. So rather than just, my thinking is rather than just sit back and say, okay, the safety budget hasn't had an increase in 8 years, the general fund hasn't had an increase in 8 years, and all these costs are going up, we have all these demands, we right now don't really have money to put into Concord Hills Park. We have an opportunity to pay for a matching grant for some park infrastructure here, we don't have money for that. So we need to go pursue additional revenue. It's our responsibility to try to relieve some of that burden on the residents, because others just falls on levies. So I look at this as our responsibility to try to find some funding, and my thinking is at the end of the year, we've done a number of things that are bringing additional dollars, so at least we can sit there and tell residents when we ask them for their help and support with tax levies that we've done our part to bring funding and not just sit back and rely 100% on them and levies. That we're using all the tools that are available to us by the law, what the legislature's given us the authority to do.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand how we got here too, and it's a great question, Sheriff, I appreciate that. But, you know, when the safety services levy failed, a lot of feedback that we got from the community was, you know, you shouldn't always be coming to the taxpayer, you should be looking and outside the box and looking for other financial streams to offset the costs, increasing costs of the townships. So when we started doing that, we were looking at different avenues. Some of the things that this board's done, Morgan worked very hard on the local government fund and changing that formula where the township was getting shortfall several dollars with its population. And with that new formula being approved by the majority of the entities within the county, we're bringing more dollars into Concord Township. The RID was another avenue to bring some dollars into the township to offset the costs, increasing costs for our safety services and other costs. And some of the other things that we did were, you know, we had to divert $500,000 that we had set aside ARPA funding for a water line project that we had promised residents, and we had to divert that to safety services so we didn't lose first responders, because we know right now how hard it is to keep them. And unfortunately for us, Mr. Rose worked extremely hard, and we got that. We got a grant through with the help of State Senator Jerry Serino at the state level to bring that water line project to fruition for those residents that are impacted by that. And we're also still working on some federal funding. Over a couple $1 million for Station 2 to offset those costs. So all this has been in the works to try to reduce the impact to our residents when we have to go to them and ask, listen, our safety services are critical to any health and well-being of the community, and if we lose these people, you know, we feel that, you know, we're putting the health and wellness of our community in jeopardy. So that's, I think, how we got here.
Okay. I like all three of you, I back all three of you. I just want to say that it doesn't matter whether it's a grant, it's federal money, it's it's this money or that money, it's all taxpayers' money. So
Yes.
when I hear about a grant, I go, that's really good. That's part of my tax money. And I told Steve Lottrette years ago, earmarks or table are terrible except when it's for me, for us. I want to caution you, as my friends and our representatives. I hear about an addition to this building, the Township Hall. Seems adequate tonight, pretty nice, air conditioning's good. I hear about additions to parks and to do other things. Don't try to compete with Menor. We're not Menor. You don't have 3% tail tax on everything. And it's good you're getting grants, you're working hard. The township's, in my opinion, growing a little too fast right now, and don't try to do too much extraneous. There's pickleball courts, there's this, there's that. There's 45 programs at the center for the community. Townships are famous for a narrow responsibility in providing for the people. Don't try to be a big city.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Anybody else here this evening like to speak? Okay, I now will ask Mr. Rose, have we received any correspondence regarding this matter regarding the RIDs? And if we have, could you read it into the record, please?
I have, Mr. Dondorfer, we have received 2 items of correspondence regarding the RID, and I've been asked to read these on the record. I will read them in the order that they were received, and here are the originals for the record. I will hand those to you, sir. The first letter we received is addressed to the Concord Township trustees, dated today, July 3rd, 2024. It is from Gary A. Placco, who is the treasurer and CFO of Riverside Local Schools at 585 Riverside Drive in Painesville Township. Dear trustees, Riverside appreciates its strong partnership with Concord Township and looks forward to ongoing collaboration between the 2 entities. However, Riverside opposes the proposed Residential Improvement District, RID, for the Ivy Ridge development and any future RIDs proposed by Concord Township. Implementation of this RID redirects 75% of the new tax revenue generated from the Ivy Ridge development to Concord Township for the next 10 years. Implementation of RIDs have a direct negative financial impact on the school district and other taxing authorities such as Auburn Career Center, Lakeland Community College, and the Lake County Commissioners. Residential development will generate additional students and increase costs for Riverside schools. However, Riverside state funding will remain flat due to being on a state funding guarantee and will generally not receive additional state revenue as enrollment increases. Therefore, Riverside relies on local property tax revenue to fund its operations. Deferral of tax revenue growth will ultimately force the school district to return to the ballot sooner for additional operating funds. When the voters of Riverside community approve a school tax levy, it is for the benefit of Riverside schools. This is specifically stated in the ballot language that voters approve. Redirecting tax revenue to Concord Township to fund the construction of Fire Station 2 and other infrastructure improvements can be viewed as in direct conflict with the will of the voters. Riverside understands that it has no legal authority to stop the implementation of a RID, redirecting 75% of the new tax revenue for a period of 10 years. However, just because it's legal does not mean it's the right thing to do. Riverside Schools recognizes Concord's infrastructure needs and the need to reconstruct Fire Station number 2, but Riverside also has significant infrastructure challenges that need addressed as well. Riverside Schools kindly request that Concord Township postpone consideration of this RID to allow additional conversation with Riverside and to explore other options that do not have an adverse financial impact on the school district. We appreciate your time and attention to this matter. Sincerely, Gary A. Placco, CPA, Treasurer, CFO, Riverside Local Schools. The second item we received is in the form of an email. It is from resident Belinda Grassi. Good afternoon, Mr. Rose. Unfortunately, I cannot attend tonight's public hearing regarding the Concord Township proposed RID due to a conflicting scheduled meeting. I'd like to provide my comments via email as I am not in favor of the proposed RID. My comments are mine as an individual township taxpayer and are not reflective of the Riverside Local Schools Board of Education nor the district. According to Ohio law, it is certainly allowable for townships to take money that was voted for school district funding and divert it for township needs, all without the vote of the residents who initially provided the funding for intended school district general operating purposes. I fully understand that this is a perfectly legal way for townships to divert the portion of the property tax dollars paid by township residents that were meant for the benefit of public schools and use it for their own infrastructure uses with little to no restrictions. In the state of Ohio, if a school needs money for operational funding, the district is required to ask voters to provide it. There are no other options. The school district has no legal ability or authority to usurp other entities' funding to benefit the district. I believe that Riverside Local School District works hard to be fiscally responsible with taxpayer-provided funds. A long history of keeping residential millage at minimum amounts is combined with fiscal prudence that allows the district to extend the life of a levy cycle well beyond what is generally and normally anticipated. I also believe that Riverside Local School District puts forth great effort to ensure that their required annual 5-year forecasts continue to remain sound and fully funded. When the forecast begins to predict a cycle of deficit spending, I have seen the district work collaboratively, both internally and externally, to find solutions to extend positive cash flow. I would ask that the township consider taking a different approach to find additional funding. As a result of this community, as a resident of this community, I would respectfully ask that the township trustees ask the voters of this township to approve funding in the same method that the school district is required to ask for fiscal support. Show the need to the voters and then let the voters speak. The school district bears the largest impact of this diversionary funding tactic, as just over 50% of the property taxes collected from township residents is levied for the benefit of the 2 public schools serving township residents. Please do the right thing. State your need to your residents and let them have a voice with their vote. I am sure that if you communicate your need effectively, the voters will agree and vote yes. Thank you for your time and your ear. Belinda Grassi. That concludes the 2 statements that we received and have been requested to be read into the record, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Rose.
you.
And just to clarify, this is, if this is implemented, the school district would still get 25%
Yes, sir.
of the revenue from the RID.
That is correct. As will Auburn Career Center and
Right. And what percentage of an impact would it, if you know, with the RID, would Riverside School?
I don't have the exact figure. I know on the Canterwood, it's less than 0.5%. So I would venture to guess it's probably less than 1% of their overall total budget.
That they would be impacted.
Correct.
Which is in contrast of the Concord Township Jet Fund, which projected for 2024 to be just over 2 million. So if you think about potentially 4 million over 10 years, obviously there's going to be a ramp up and a ramp down period, significantly higher than a 1% or negligible figure in the potential school.
Thank you, Mr. Petrie. Any comments? Okay, at this time, I will now entertain a motion to close the public hearing. So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, Mr. Rose.
Mr. Dondorfer?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucci?
Yes.
Mr. McIntosh?
Yes.
Okay, that will conclude our public hearing for this evening, and thank you for coming.